Hi, I'm Anusia, and this is Soul Toll, your place to pause so you can explore your life in a whole new way. Today, our guest is Eric Gendron, state champion wrestler, D1 football player, jiu-jitsu black belt, and owner of a crystal store, a very successful one at that. Did you know that the crystal industry size is valued at about $6 billion and the gemstone market at 38 billion with expected high growth? I did not until I met Eric and got curious about this world. These numbers got me thinking that maybe there's something to this world that I hadn't seen before. And in addition to their beauty, maybe they work functionally. I'm still not sure, so let's find out today with Eric. Eric, welcome to Soul Toll.
Anusha, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited for this conversation. So, just to kind of frame it for people to step back and someone who heard crystal store crystals, this conversation is about crystals. Like, do I want to stay tuned in? I really want to play to the skeptical listener and say, you know what, like, if you embrace this conversation today, here's the business case as to why you should listen. Could you share that with us?
Yeah, of course. Crystal stones, minerals. If you go back thousands of years, every civilization has been using these as part of their practices, separated by thousands of miles, thousands of years. And it's something that we've all done. And only recently have crystals and stones become a thing that's become, hocus pocus or the term woo woo, which we hear
It
very
comes up
often.
a lot on
It,
this show,
it,
actually.
yeah, the term woo woo is thrown around a lot and it encompasses a lot of things, but that's really a recent development that these are considered things that don't work or are silly or foo foo. Um, it's a pretty recent development. Um, so I think for people to take a step back and keep an open mind and say, well, what if we look at the history of these things? And more importantly, what if I personally interact with some of these? Um, I could go a long way.
hmm And I would like to take people into, so your store is Ravenstone.
Yes.
And when you walk into the store, the thing that really struck me is it was a whole vibe, but a really welcoming one. And it felt like to a lot of different people. And I asked you about that, and you said, well, it's us, it's authentically us. Could you just paint a picture for people as to kind of the world that we're talking about, what we're bringing them into now and stepping into now, like through the experience of walking into your store? What could people expect to see?
So walking into our shop is certainly an experience, and we put a lot of time and a lot of effort into building that experience. Um, there's a lot of stones. There's a lot of color. There's the light is really good. But more importantly, the energy of that space is really, really positive. One of the things we talked about is where we're located is not a heavy foot traffic area. And that was intentional. Not only is it near our house, which is amazing, our commute's really good, but it means that in order to get to our store, you have to say, I'm going to get in my car, I'm going to take the time, I'm going to go to this place. So whether there's 5 customers in the store or there's 50 customers in the store, everybody there wants to be there. So people come in with that intentional energy. We don't deal with everybody has friends who work retail. When we said we were going to do retail, and people are like, you guys are crazy. It's really tough dealing with people. It's hard. We don't see that.
Mm-hmm.
All of our customers are amazing. Everybody who comes into that store has super, super positive energy. And part of the reason the space feels so good is because that energy stays in there. The stones certainly help, but humans have energy. And when it's really positive, that stuff sticks around and the space holds that energy. And even people who aren't energy sensitive or, skeptics, they come in the store and like, this place feels different. And that's the best compliment you can get is that people feel good. And we do have people who come in all the time who just come in and say, I just want to be in here today
Oh,
because
that's amazing.
this is my place to recharge. And it's cool. That's the ultimate compliment
Yeah,
you
I
can
just
get, I
want to be
think.
here because it feels good.
Because it feels good. People go out of their way and they make a long drive. We have people come from all over New England all the time. And sometimes it's to buy some really big stones, and sometimes it's to just catch that vibe and leave feeling recharged.
Yeah, you talk a lot about energy and people's personal energy, and now you've just said that people come into your store almost to refuel, recharge, or whatever actually it is really what they want to get from that experience. And so I guess functionally, like, is that what you're providing through the medium of crystals and gemstones and minerals?
Yeah, I think the energy exchange is the biggest part of it. And, we'll talk a bit about sourcing, I'm sure. But for us, it's people come into the store and they can feel seen. They can, they're listened to, um, and they can have a real conversation about these things. And whether it's someone who demands a lot of energy from us, which we're happy to give, or someone who just wants a little bit of that, that is the reason why I think that our store has been able to do so well and why people keep coming back.
Yeah.
Our thing is once we get someone there, we feel like we kind of have a customer for life because it just feels good to be in there. It feels good for us.
Hmm.
I mean, you own your own business, you work all the time, and it's never a burden to have to go to that physical space because it just feels good to be in there.
Well, that's a great business case in and of itself of, everyone's craving more energy, getting a cup of coffee, doing it in all these different ways, prioritizing their workouts. So this is another way to co-create, to functionally work with what's around you to manage your energy, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I want to just back up a minute to the elephant in the room of you.
Okay.
That to the untrained eye, you are just this magnificent walking contradiction of D1 football at Holy Cross, I
Yeah,
believe,
Holy Cross. Yep.
wrestling, jiu-jitsu, like all these seemingly like very macho things that a crystal store can very typically be seen, at least from the outside, as a very, kind of feminine space. And so I'm so curious from that background, like how did you come into this work?
So that's really interesting. I think personally, like taking a step back for myself is I grew up watching 80s martial arts movies, right? So, my favorite movies were like things I had on repeat. We had VHSs, and you just wear those things out.
Yeah, yeah.
Kickboxer, you had, Jean-Claude Van Damme, you had Bloodsport. Um, Absolutely loved the original Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze. I mean, even some of the Rocky films is there is always this idea of like a spiritual warrior.
Mm,
So there's always that part in those films where they're going to a mentor or they're finding some kind of spiritual aspect that they're
yep.
tapping into before the big boss battle, the final
Mm-hmm.
battle. And
Wax on, wax off is
I mean, you think of Mr.
right.
Miyagi. Mr. Miyagi was not, he was not some real bad dude. He was, but you
Yeah.
never see it, at least not in the original. He's not some super tough fighter. He was just someone who was really tuned in and very spiritual, and that translated into his martial arts. And it's kind of a trope. It's this the movies follow kind of a formula.
Yeah.
But you think of like Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze. He was such a badass, but he never had to do anything because people were kind of, wow, Dalton's really tough. Don't mess with him. But he's doing Tai Chi.
Mm-hmm.
He's reading philosophy books. He's very turned into his spirituality. And in all of those films, at some point, they're also really vulnerable. They're vulnerable warriors. They talk about being afraid. I couldn't remember which one it was, but I was thinking about Rocky when he tells Adrian, he's like, I'm afraid. You want to hear it? I'm afraid. And those movies tap into something that you can be super macho, but
Mm-hmm.
be vulnerable. And that was always really appealing to me. That it's not here's this hard line, here's this thing. I'm a guy. I can't show my feelings. I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
It's you can be both. Um, and I really think that true masculinity is being able to say, hey, I can do these things. And there's definitely the testosterone driven masculine, combat stuff. I want to be physical, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can't have the softer side and the spiritual side of it as well. I mean, that's going back again to thousands of years. I mean, samurai,
Mm-hmm.
Native Americans, there are these we think of them as really badass warriors.
Mm-hmm.
They're very, very spiritual.
Isn't that amazing? We watch it, but we haven't embraced it. We somehow lost touch with it.
I recommend everybody watch a little sumo wrestling. Have you ever watched any sumo wrestling?
No.
Unbelievable sport. Really, really incredible to watch. It's you can get lost in it.
Okay.
It's really fun. These are these are people who train their entire life and given their life over to a combat sport, which is really, really intense, but it's also rooted spirituality. I mean, the sumo wrestlers, they are looked at as sort of demigods in Japan.
Okay.
But their practice before and after when they're practicing their sumo, it's very intentional and it's very spiritual. They cleanse the ring before they
Interesting. They
compete.
have a lot of practices around it.
It's and you watch some of those things, and I had never. This is a fairly new thing for me in the last year to really get into it.
Is this
It's
the
like,
next thing you're going to
oh
conquer?
no, yeah, I think that ship has sailed. But these guys are really, it's really intense. It's super physical, but there's also this really stoic spiritual aspect to it too, which I think is really interesting. And I think that's, it's been good. It's 2,000-year-old sport.
So this is something you've carried with you through D1 football,
Yeah.
through all of these experiences. Did you like notice that maybe you were approaching things differently? Did people ask you about it, or was that more of a internal
More
experience?
internal. And
Yeah.
I think as I've gotten older, I think it's become easier to talk about and easier to show. Because again, I think one of the hardest parts about being spiritual as a guy is that you're often, ostracized. Well, that's silly, that's stupid. What are you doing? For certain things, and then there's
Hmm.
certain aspects that are very accepted. Um, but it's something that personally I've been able to embrace more as I've gotten older.
Hmm.
Which I wish I embraced it more when I was younger, but I think that's hindsight's always
Here we are.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
All right. So I opened up talking about the industry size at 6 billion for crystals, at 38 billion with expected growth for the gemstone market. And when I first came in your store, I was just coming in looking for a Christmas present. I didn't know I was walking into a whole vibe. I
right.
didn't know like that there was this whole experience waiting for me through that door. And you had just gotten back from a gem and mineral show, and I don't even know if that's the right word, but I
Yes.
hadn't even known that these worlds existed. And so I looked them up, and these trade shows were like 4,000 vendors. It sounds like they just take over whatever venue they're at. Is it like in that world walking into a gemstone trade show? Like, can you give us a peek as to what that looks like?
Sure. Yeah. And like the 4,000 vendors, I'm assuming that's got to be like the Tucson
Yep.
Gem Show. That's the one that everybody knows, everybody
Okay.
heard about. Even people who aren't into stones is like I've heard of that show. The entire city of Tucson, Arizona. It's about 6 weeks long. The
Whoa.
core the core being about a month in the middle.
Wow.
It's very long.
Do people stay the whole time?
If you're selling, most people do.
Okay.
Some of it's staggered, so you show up the first week, and some of the shows may not have opened yet. And then if you go the last week, some of the shows are over. But some buyers go for 2, 3 weeks at a time. They spend a lot of time there. We go for about a week every year, and that's where we do most of our purchasing. And it's overwhelming.
I can imagine.
It's
Well, I
the
guess I can't actually imagine.
it's
That's why
the
I'm asking
yeah,
to go there vicariously through you because it sounds like it.
it's amazing. It's the Tucson show, and I'll talk about a couple of shows. So
Okay.
the Tucson show is it's the entire city of Tucson. So imagine any civic center you have in your downtown area, wherever you are. Imagine there's four of those in Tucson. That's all full. They're all full of people selling stones, gemstones, cut gemstones, uncut rough stuff, and things that are in the metaphysical space.
Hmm.
Then you have the outdoor shows. So there is these massive outdoor tents that are a quarter mile long that are just full of vendors, and those are set up for a month. And there's multiple of those shows, and they're you can't fathom how big these tents are until you get there. You're like a quarter of a mile long. It's like they're that big. They're massive, massive
Hmm.
tents, just full of people. And then you have the hotel and motel shows.
Okay.
So there will be a show at like a Motel 6, and it's just everybody descends on that motel, and then they're set up with tables and their stones, their wares
Okay.
outside of their motel room. But then when you're buying something from this person, you go
Hmm.
into their motel room and you're basically checking out on their bed.
That would make me feel like I would struggle with buying something valid from a Motel 6 bedroom.
Yes.
Like, have you
So
had that experience?
no, it's kind of cool. Some of them are set up in a way that's like those started because imagine you're coming from Morocco
Okay.
and you're a minor. You bring your own stuff over. So you try to get into one of the big shows and the vendor fees are super high. You're like, man, I'm not going to pay all this money. It's not going to be good for my business. So over time, they started saying, well, what if a bunch of us rent some rooms at a motel,
And then it's up to the buyer.
and then it's up to the buyer. And they've become bigger. Some of the shows, like I think the Motel 6 shows, for example, like so it's a pretty legit, a
Okay.
legitimate show now with people that go every year. But then on the outskirts of those shows are people who just basically like, I'm
Yeah.
bringing some stuff. I'm from Brazil. I'm bringing the things that my family and I may have found, or I'm buying from somebody and I'm coming to the US to sell these things. And you're just on the outskirts.
So how do you navigate what you would see as a quality product versus not? That sounds like finding a diamond in the rough,
I
you
mean,
know?
yeah, it can be tough. And that's the most fun part about being in this business as a business is that you need to spend time, you have to cultivate relationships, you need to know your product,
Hmm.
you need to know your stones, you need to know what you're looking at. There's a lot of words like fake stones out there. If you can tell, even if you don't know stones, you can tell something's not a real gemstone pretty quickly.
Okay.
But in terms of what quality it is and pricing,
Hmm.
you have to know what you're doing.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise, you could just be in a position of, overspend or buy things that maybe aren't the best quality
Hmm.
or things that are repaired. That's a really big part of these gem shows.
Yeah.
People sell things that have been repaired and you can't
Oh,
really tell until you
yeah.
get home and you go, this was glued back together.
Hmm.
This was damaged at some point.
Hmm.
So you just got to spend a lot of time.
Yeah, you got to know your stuff.
You have to know
Yeah.
your stuff.
All right.
But some of the favorite vendors that we have are people that we've met at those smaller shows. We see them
Hmm.
every year, and we're very friendly with them. It's kind of nice with those vendors because you do feel like there's some really big importers and cutting people who cut and polish stones and of amazing things, and it's a big business. You're
Yeah,
talking about
right.
billions of dollars. But it's kind of nice to know when you go to those smaller shows, you find some really interesting minerals, and you do feel like your money's kind of going directly to
Yeah.
the
It's
people
almost like
who
support local. Yeah.
yeah, at those shows, and that's where
Hmm.
you find the interesting stuff. Sometimes you look around for a week and be like, man, I can't find any.
So let's talk about the interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about here? I'd love for you to take us through. I feel like okay, we built the business case for this world in so many ways. It says it by the numbers, but also your personal energy and the experience of walking into your store that people go in just to feel good. So what about like an example of a particular stone that you might be sourcing? Like why that stone? What does it do? How do you guide people through finding what works for them?
So someone comes into the store and says, I need XYZ.
You tell me, or you're at a trade show and you're sourcing, like, how do you know what you're looking for? And what do these different things do functionally?
Yeah. So we know what we're looking for. And we have a rough list. As a business, we have to say there are certain stones you have to have
Okay.
because there are crystals, stones, minerals are kind of a triple threat, right? So you have things that are really beautiful, energy aside, history aside, they're just really visually
Like what?
stunning. Amethyst, that's the easy. Everybody knows what amethyst is.
Okay.
Whether it's rough or it's polished, that color is just always really, really nice to look at. We sell a lot of it because even if people don't know anything about stones, which is one of my favorite things about our stores, people come in and they don't know anything about crystals and they're drawn to something.
Hmm.
Um, Everybody loves amethyst. They go, man, this is so beautiful. I really like this stone. So it's just beautiful. Two, it's a piece of natural history. I mean, these things are millions and millions of years old, sometimes billions of years old, which we can't, I don't think the human mind can fathom how much billions actually is, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to think about that as in terms of time. But to pick up something and be like, yeah, this is 2 billion years old. It's
Yeah,
kind of crazy
it
it's
is.
crazy to think
It's like
about.
you're holding a star.
And it's a piece of natural history. And then the third part is the energy aspect of it. So you have these three things that, you can be looking for one of them or you can be looking for all three. So when we go and look for these stones, it's the same for us. So we're looking for really, really beautiful stuff, things that we think are visually stunning. Um, we're looking for things that we can attach the history to. So a lot of times when we're buying things, we're asking people about them. We don't
Mm-hmm.
we don't buy things and just willy nilly be like, yeah, give me four of those. We handpick all the stuff in our
Well, because then
shop.
you're going to name it in your shop,
Yeah,
so it has to
which is
be
quite the labor of love
worth it.
at
I
this
bet.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I always wondered whether you wanted to, like, we're happy with that decision to name every single
it's
stone in your shop.
when we first opened the store, we didn't have nearly as many stones. We were just getting going,
Mm-hmm.
and it was our fun way of keeping track of inventory. And it's turned into something that's very much us, and it's great.
Yeah.
Um, but that's how we buy them.
Mm-hmm.
Really, we go and we look at everything, and we spend a lot of time picking these things out. And part of it is like, which ones are we vibing with? It's certainly not empirical.
Mm-hmm.
It's I like this one, and you may pick up one that looks similar, and you're like, this one doesn't do it for me. This
Mm-hmm.
one really does.
Mm-hmm.
And it also goes for people who are selling these items.
You use the word empirical, which brings up the question about you had mentioned a quartz crystal watch
Yes.
and how people believe in, don't even question. Of course, you would have that in a watch.
Yeah.
But then when you take it out of a watch, all of a sudden it's questioned.
Yeah.
Why do you think that contradiction comes up for people?
I think there's certain things that people need scientific evidence to support, and without it, they refuse to believe in it or trust in it or put their faith in it. And there's certain things people don't need scientific evidence to support, and they're happy to say, yeah, of course, that's just how it is. And stones are one of them. These things literally hold energy. Quartz,
Hmm.
piezoelectricity. You squeeze a
Thank
quartz.
you. I didn't know how
It's
to pronounce
yeah, it's a
that.
so you squeeze a quartz, it
Yeah.
produces an electrical charge. When you use a Bic lighter, it's not flint anymore. It's a little hammer that strikes a little quartz, and it's squeezing it, and it's producing that little spark.
Hmm.
And on the other side, if you run an electrical current through quartz, it changes its shape.
Hmm.
So it will deform, it'll contract, it'll expand, depending on the energy.
Can the eye see that? No.
No, I
Okay.
mean, it's happening
Yeah. Okay.
at a small level. But these things are interacting with electrical currents and
Yeah.
frequencies. Um, and quartz is the most interesting one because it's everywhere. Amethyst is a variety of quartz.
Hmm.
Most
Oh, okay.
most stones, when people come into a stone shop, the vast majority of stones are some variety of quartz, and whatever else is going on in there, how it grew or other trace minerals, but most all of it's quartz.
Okay. I love these three reasons you say you go for different minerals. And I'm mindful of language, crystals, minerals.
So
What's the right way to say
yeah,
it?
I mean, minerals basically covers everything.
Okay.
Okay, and then you have your crystals, which crystals technically, most things that we sell in the store would technically be crystals because
Okay.
of how they grew, how the first molecules arrange themselves. The definition of a crystal, and I'm not going to get this 100% right,
Okay.
but from how I try to explain it is like when those first few molecules arrange themselves. Silicon dioxide is quartz,
Okay.
right? It's three atoms.
Mm-hmm.
It's a triangle.
Okay.
Then the next one that gets attached, that's a triangle. And the next one's a triangle. So it's trigonal. And
Mm-hmm.
then as it grows, it's basically two triangles attached. They are six-sided.
Okay.
So that's like the classic, you think of quartz, they have six sides. Most towers that
Right.
you get are
Mm-hmm.
cut and polished at six sides that
Okay.
grow. That's a crystal.
So if
Same
I
with
say
cubic.
mineral and crystal, am I being redundant or am I
No,
okay?
not all,
Not all
no,
crystals are minerals, right? Yeah.
yeah. So
Okay.
it's, so it's either way is fine. Crystal's easiest because people understand it.
Okay, I'm gonna go with crystals.
Crystals
Okay,
works. Yeah.
so I walk in and there's three reasons I can be looking for something, just the pure beauty of it.
Hmm.
And I think of being a kid in a toy shop that I remember there was always the geode section, and I loved spinning the tower and like finding my geode. And that was just such pure fun. And I feel like every kid loves rocks. And so I don't know how we lose that
That's a
along the
big part.
way.
I say that all the time.
Yeah. So just pure beauty and joy. The natural history of it, of finding something that just kind of blows your mind because it's been here for so long and you appreciate like having a part of history in your house. I almost think of that as like the artistic museum quality lens to it. And then personal energy work or managing energy in a space or of yourself. So I would know how to come in and just be like, all right, I think this is really beautiful, or I want to acquire or curate, this piece in my museum. But what about the energy piece? What if I came into your store
Yeah.
and I said, I feel like I'm just running at a surface level all the time and I can't quite feel grounded. I can't quite like just feel anchored or, I'm on that surface level. Walk me through what might help me in that moment.
So, of course. So when you come in and you say, "Hey, if maybe you feel a little untethered," I
Untethered.
hear that
Great.
word a
Thank you.
lot.
That's
I'm
a
feeling a little
yes.
untethered. I'm feeling kind of floaty. I want something that's going to kind of return me to earth.
Mm-hmm.
For me, those would be your iron-based minerals,
Okay.
right? You get your hematites, limonites, guthites, and your
You
stones
say
that
right,
contain
and then you
those.
list off a bunch of words I don't know.
Yes. So
Okay.
your iron-based stones have been traditionally your most grounding stones.
Okay.
So if you feel overwhelmed or you feel like you really can't wrap your head around something, you feel like you're untethered. So those are kind of going to recenter you and bring you back in. And iron has been that way for for most people for a very long time. So I would show you your options for those stones. Anything that contains iron, and I would say these are traditionally the stones for grounding.
Mm,
One of the beautiful things about our shop, and if you have a local crystal shop next to you, I would find one that allows you to do this too, is just to we let you interact with everything. Things aren't behind glass and
mm-hmm.
locked up, and there's not signs that say don't touch. Like you need to be able to handle these things. And maybe you handle 5 different iron-based stones, and you go, ooh, this one just feels right.
Mm,
Um, so I would try to point you in the direction of those. And then I'm also pretty quick to tell people these are my suggestions, but everybody interacts with these things differently too.
yeah.
So how our understanding of energy comes not only from reading and talking to other people who are really into these, but also from our own interactions. So it's very much how you feel. If you come in and I show you some stuff and you're like, these aren't jiving with me, and then
Mm-hmm.
you pick up something totally different. You pick up a fluorite crystal, beautiful green fluorite, and you go, wow, what is this about? This makes me feel really good. I can talk you through it about where it came from, how I understand its energy, what I would use it for. And you may say, actually, that usually what it comes out of is like, actually, that is actually how I've been thinking, and this is really resonating with
That
me.
actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yes. But it's really a very personal thing about how you want to interact with those stones too. So we'll definitely give you guidance on what you should do. And if you go to our website, we have a short snippet about how we feel about these stones. But if you have the opportunity to handle them, that's
That's the way to
also
do it.
super important.
And you said that your store is authentically you. Are there certain, like a lot of a certain crystals in your store?
So there are things that yes, there's certainly things that we love that are not like popular stones.
Yeah.
Like we have a lot of, I mean, pyrite's pretty popular, but we love pyrite.
Okay.
So we have a ton of pyrite, which is beautiful, fool's gold, beautiful, sparkly, all different grades of it. We have a lot of, I mean, we have a lot of amethyst. We have an inordinate amount of labradorite in our shop too. That is one of our very favorite stones. Really beautiful, flashy, rainbow colored stone. But there are things that no matter what we do, we're like, hey, we have plenty of this stuff. We don't need to get any more of this because we probably have enough to last us a year.
Yeah.
We're gonna we buy more of it.
Yeah, you go and you're like, but I just.
And part of the authentic part is really, again, doing our well, we're going to a show. We're leaving for another gem show in 5 weeks.
Hmm.
We have another show. We do an inventory and we say, what do we need? What don't we need? But honestly, a lot of that goes right out the window. We
Yeah. Oh,
show
when you
up
show up, interesting.
and maybe we have a ton of, we keep talking about amethysts. We have a bunch of amethysts, but then we meet someone new and we just love them
Hmm.
and they tell us their story. And we go, yeah, like I want these too, because I want to be able to bring those back and share that story and that energy with our customers.
Hmm.
So that also means there's probably some gaps and stuff we carry. We try to have a variety and we're drawn to a lot of things, but we really get things based on how we feel about them. And
Well, that's what makes it human. You had mentioned,
yeah,
having a storefront for that human connection because that's the kind of authenticity and that's not static. That's
yeah,
not, I have a list of things and I'm going to go get inventory. That's the evolving process, it sounds like, that you engage with for your store.
yeah. And I think that's what makes every store, well, every time we travel, we go to other crystal shops and we got thousands of pieces of labradorite.
Mm-hmm.
I might buy a labradorite in another store
Mm-hmm.
because I don't have that labradorite. I like that one. And I think when you go to a place that has its own authenticity, everybody does things in their own way, and they purchase things and they curate in their own way,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of my favorite parts about this business. Is it's you don't go online and add to cart and buy a bunch of stuff and
Yeah.
put them on shelves. You're out interacting with people and you're interacting with your products from a visual and an energetic level, and your fingerprints are all over everything that you do, and it's like that anywhere you go.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned you do things in your own way. And at the beginning, you had mentioned kind of coming back to you've held this within through D1 football, through, you saw the videos growing up of spiritual warriors, I believe you
Yeah.
said. Yeah. What about someone listening now, either them or they have a kid that has some of these things in mind, but is keeping them inside? You said, I wish I could have gone back and maybe had more of that. What about that person now? What would you say to them to kind of, I guess, encourage them, or maybe not? Maybe it's okay to stay inside. I don't know.
No, I think you should definitely, I mean, it's be yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
How often do you hear that? And I think to be your authentic self isn't just doing whatever you want to do all the time, no matter how crazy or wacky it is. I think being your authentic self is getting down to your core pillars that you may have and saying what's important to me and not letting anything get in the way of going towards those goals.
Mm-hmm.
If think about who you want to be now, like who you want to be now and who you want to be in the future. Something that my drives my every day is I want to be proud of myself. So I'm doing things today. So when I look back on myself tomorrow, I say, wow, good job yesterday, Eric,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like I'm proud of the things that I did. And so do those things that are going to make you proud of yourself in the future. And those can be big things or those can be really small things.
I was going to ask you, and maybe I still will, but that, from our conversation today, what would you want people to take away? But I feel like you just said it. But if there's anything else you'd like to add to that from our
I
conversation.
think the only thing would be as, you know, um, and again, as we're all getting older every day, which is the goal, which is amazing that we get to what a privilege
Mm-hmm.
we get to age, to get
You're like,
older.
please don't put it out there. I'm happy about it. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think it's great. Is that I think we tend to let our thoughts and our attitudes calcify a bit, and we say, nope, that's not how I do things. This is how I've always done it. This is how I'll always do it. Nope, I can't do this because X, Y, Z. Is give yourself some slack and allow yourself to explore things you may not. And I want to say necessarily don't worry about what other people think, but don't worry about what you think about yourself in that moment. Think about what, if you want to try something, try it. And it gets harder to do as you get
Mm-hmm.
older. But if you try things and you keep trying new things, I think it just makes your life, more enriching and more fun.
Thank you. It's like permission for self-compassion
Yeah.
to almost though get over the hurdle to do whatever it is you want to do anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one step at a time. I mean, if I don't know, you want to run a marathon,
Mm-hmm.
you don't put on a pair of shoes and go out and run 26.2 miles. You get out and you just start walking. You want to get into energy. You want to start working with stones. You don't have to necessarily go out and learn about every single stone that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I need a stone for this and stone for that. Is like go to a shop and just
Mm-hmm.
practice some stuff. Talk to the proprietor.
Mm-hmm.
Most crystal store owners are amazing. Like most people are very, very passionate about what they do. Go walk in and be like, hey, I'm interested in XYZ, and just dip your toe. It doesn't have to be significant financial investment. I think a lot of people think that too is,
Mm-hmm.
oh, these are all super expensive. I can't get it. No, it doesn't have to be.
But they can be.
They certainly can be. Especially for huge things
Yeah.
or rare items that are harder to get. But they don't have to be.
Yeah.
You can come and get something pretty simple and just start your journey that way.
Thank you for that. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Anusia.
And I am going to put you on the spot before we wrap,
Okay.
which is that this came from your store.
Yes. Yeah.
She doesn't have a name.
Ooh,
Could you please name her for us?
Athena.
Athena. There it is.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Our bonsai tree now has a name of Athena. Thank you, Eric.
Of course.
Thank you so much for being
Thanks for
here.
having me on.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.